evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 3rd of June of the calendar year 2025. Warmer weather is coming finally here in Cincinnati. It surpassed 80 degrees for the first time in the 2025 calendar year, and it's probably going to surpass it again tomorrow, which means real weather is finally here and it's finally coming. And I hope everyone locally here was able to enjoy the day. And it was basically a gorgeous day, not too hot, not too cold. But the warmer weather is finally here as we finally approach June. And it's been a long time coming simply because we've been having like the equivalent of fall and winter weather for the better half of the last month or so. And we basically had no spring. I mean, basically like it's gone from winter to summer here in Cincinnati, which is, of course, Cincinnati weather as we know it. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day today. Let's touch on some things here. Lots to get to today. Some new people out there. First of all, those watching me on the Kick platform, shout out to you. Hope you guys are doing well as the show now hits that platform, among many others. Let's start with some NFL news and a bit of a sad note today. It was the passing of one of the premier edge rushers, defensive lineman of his time, the standout Jim Marshall of the Minnesota Vikings. Part of the squad that was known as the Purple People Eaters, along with guys like Alan Page, Carl Eller, and Gary Larson. Basically, those four guys combined for 19 Pro Bowls, Pro Bowl selections. Two of the four being Page and Eller going into the Hall of Fame. There's been an outcry as to why Jim Marshall isn't in the Hall of Fame, which he belongs with the others because that defensive front was a part of a team that went to 4 Super Bowls back in those days. I mean, they basically just reigned terror. When you talk about Jim Marshall, you talk about a player who unofficially was credited with 130 sacks in his NFL career. Now, let me remind you, this is before sack became an official stat in 1982 in the NFL. And basically, he's credited with 130. But you talk about one of the all-time Iron Men in NFL history, started 270 consecutive games as a member of the Minnesota Vikings, and basically was a part of that vaunted squad defensive front that went to 4 Super Bowls, better known as the Purple People Eaters. Personally, nobody there, especially Jim Marshall, didn't like it. They liked other names among many others. But his fact that this guy is not even in the Hall of Fame is a bit of an eyebrow raiser when you consider just how vaunted that defensive front is, and it was a part of 4 Super Bowls. I mean, him with guys like Carl Eller, Alan Page, and Gary Larson. I mean, Eller and Page are in the Hall of Fame. And Jim Marshall might have had as good of a career, if not greater than those, although more Pro Bowl selections at a time when Pro Bowl selections was the big deal back in the late 1960s, early 1970s. Basically, he liked to be called with among many other things, the fearsome foursome, among many other names. Back in those days, the motto of the Purple People Eaters of that defensive front was meet at the quarterback, which of course led to many sacks. But as we know, sacks wasn't an official stat until the 1982 season. But Jim Marshall, a terrific defensive lineman, one of the more scary individuals during that time, especially that whole defensive front with the names I just mentioned. May God and his family find peace and solace in this difficult time. Just a standout player and a standout defensive line was that Minnesota Vikings defense back in the 70s that led to many, many wins and, of course, the 4 Super Bowl appearances back then. Now to some news that took place earlier today. Of course, everyone's favorite topic in the gaming world, especially in the NFL community, is who's going to be on the cover of the 2026 Madden. Turns out it is Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles, which I don't have a problem with. I mean, look at the year he had, capped off with a Super Bowl ring for the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, the highlight cover was the hurdle he had when he hurdled the Jacksonville Jaguar player. Can't remember his name off the top of my head. But that's basically your cover. Everyone's going to talk about the Madden jinx or Madden curse or whatever amongst some of the other players. I don't know if it's going to partake true to this one. Hasn't been much of a curse in recent years, but so I think that's sort of subsided a little bit. But Saquon Barkley is the right person for the cover. I mean, there's other options you could have gone, but they made the right choice here. Saquon Barkley is rightfully on the cover, and he really deserved it. Now to the bigger news, of course, speaking of the Eagles, the trade is complete with the San Francisco 49ers, with them sending Bryce Huff to the 49ers for the 5th round pick, which under, I don't know what conditions are, can go from a 5th to a 4th. Bryce Huff had some of his best years under the now defensive coordinator Robert Saleh, and I think he's going to have a resurrection here a little bit, especially when playing opposite Nick Bosa in San Francisco. Don't know what it means in the long term or the big picture, but it is what it is at this point, and we're going to see as the season progresses. Doesn't necessarily fit all that great in Philadelphia. I think it's a win-win for both. Philadelphia gets an additional draft pick, which Howie Roseman just does a stellar job as an Eagles general manager, getting draft picks while building a winner simultaneously, and he's just done a marvelous job with that. And to top it off, we have, of course, the 49ers, whose defense was just absolutely not all that great last season. Gets an edge rusher to take some pressure off of Nick Bosa and that defensive front because Nick Bosa won't be seeing as many double teams. Neither is Bryce Huff, who saw a lot of that in Philadelphia. So now you have one-on-one matchups on the edges for the San Francisco 49ers this season. It's a good, solid fit. And remember, some of his best years were under Robert Saleh, who's now the defensive coordinator for San Francisco. And maybe a renaissance or a bounce back maybe coming this season for Bryce Huff. But both sides won this particular trade, in my opinion, simply because, 49ers needed to retool that defense. They did it. Eagles get another draft pick, which 5th, which could, of course, bump it to a 4th round pick under certain conditions. And that is where I think both sides won this particular trade. Good trade all the way around, in my opinion, because both sides win. You don't see that much because there's always one team is trying to fleece the other, but there wasn't really any fleecing here. It's good all the way around. Maybe Huff gets a bit of a renaissance and the juice jolts into a system because he did this under Saleh in the past. Now, of course, the big news out of Miami and Pittsburgh is that they've renewed the trade discussions for Jonnu Smith, the tight end for Miami. He wants to stay in Miami with a new contract. Of course, talks have lingered at that point. Of course, it was revealed not too long ago as Donald Parham Jr., the tight end for the Steelers, out for the season with a torn Achilles. And now they're probably going to look for a replacement for him. Jonnu Smith probably is the best way they could probably go. Question I have is who's going to throw him the ball at the quarterback position? I mean, is it going to be Will Howard, Mason Crosby, or whoever the third quarterback is? I can't remember off the top of my head. But who's going to be the one to throw the passes to these particular receivers and tight ends? Because we know they've gone through a makeshift with quarterbacks since the retirement of Big Ben Roethlisberger. But if they get him, I think it's a good piece for whoever's going to be their quarterback. As I said, I think they should just stick to taking a flyer with Will Howard. I know they've been in the Aaron Rodgers discussion. There's, of course, the rumors with Kirk Cousins. But as I said, I don't know what you gain out of getting a quarterback in the 30-something, 40-something range who has nothing left as a one-year stopgap, because unless you're guaranteed to win the Super Bowl this season, which the Steelers aren't, that's not the route I would take. I would just stick with what you have at quarterback, take the flyer on Will Howard in the 6th round, because I think he's a great fit for what Pittsburgh does, and I think he'll fit nicely. To stay away from those 30-something, 40-somethings like Rodgers and Cousins, because they don't get you anywhere. But getting Jonnu Smith would be a nice acquisition, but it depends who's throwing him the ball. Let's see who's going to do that first. I know Roman Wilson has partook in the OTAs over there for Pittsburgh, which I think is a good thing, given they were waiting for him to play last season, and that never came up for whatever reason. So let's see where this one goes. Next up is, of course, the situation here in Cincinnati, and it's still ongoing between Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals. There's an article that came out today, one of those websites I can't remember, And it was quoted, Albert Breer, the stand-up aficionado in the NFL, points to the mandatory that's taking place here in some point next week. It's the mandatory minicamp. And of course, we know Trey Hendrickson is slated to be a part of it. If he's not a part of it, he will be fined by the team, as he said Zach Taylor, the head coach of the Bengals, would do. It's an ongoing drama that needs to end. I mean, we all know this. Just end it one way or the other. End it with a trade. End it with a contract. It doesn't matter. Of course, earlier today, it was the one-time Bengals Solomon Wilcots on the Jim Rome show saying that he expects something to be done between the team and the contract's going to be north of $30 million. Which would be a good thing. I mean, they're trying to manipulate the cap to see if they can fit it. But let's get this thing done and get the season started, because it's too much drama, too much unnecessary stuff. Trey Hendrickson's been a pro since he's been in this team, since they signed him after the 2020 season. And the Bengals have just basically done him dirty with how they've done about business. Now, I'm not going to exclude Trey Hendrickson because he doesn't help his own cause by putting the business out in the media. Because as I said, if you're in a situation like that and you put the business out in the media, you're going to lose your value a bit. They're saying this may linger into the season. I hope it doesn't, because I said the other night, look at what happened with Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh when that situation happened, because he sat out the year and his value dropped. Same thing may happen here with Trey Hendrickson, because apparently he supposedly dug in to the idea of wanting to sit out the season, which is something I don't necessarily agree with, because you saw what happened with Bell. His value plummeted. And we consider Trey Hendrickson's going to be 31 in this upcoming season. He's probably going to be smart enough to play on the field regardless of the contract. I mean, that's where I've always stood. Even if it's a one-year deal for what's left remaining, it's, I believe, similar to the essence of $18 million. I expect him to be there once the season starts, because I can't see him really doing this, simply because I just think the guy's a pro, and someone needs to remind him about what happened with Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh when he went the sit-out-the-season route. And that was basically it. Bell later admitted that he was wrong for doing it, and if he would have done it all over again, he wouldn't have done it, because he lost out on a lot. Someone needs to remind Trey Hendrickson of that. We'll see where this one goes, because every day we're always entertaining something when it comes to this particular situation in Cincinnati. Now, on to the world of boxing. Over the weekend, it was announced that Jaime Munguia, after he got his revenge win, tested positive or had some strange flunkage of a inconsistent drug test after the revenge win. If you know, he got the win after he got knocked out in the previous meeting between the two fighters. But there's a lot of weird conclusions being jumped on here when it comes to his one-time trainer, Eddie Reynoso, known for training Canelo Alvarez. Just because he was a part of that doesn't necessarily mean he's on it. But it's ultra disappointing, because Munguia, I thought, was better than this. I mean, he came out and tried to say he's going to do the second sample, and hopefully that turns out, in his favor, and he's going to prove his innocence. We know the story with PED users all the time. They're going to make this certain statement saying, the first sample was contaminated, yada, 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 yada. Let's wait till the second one. It's disappointing that Jaime Munguia will resort to this, considering that he was a stand-up fighter and his only losses were to Alvarez and Zarate in his last those two fights. Of course, he got the revenge on a unanimous decision. Not sure why he would need this, because I thought he could have just handled Suarez in the rematch after he got knocked out the first time. The only reason why he got knocked out on the first time was because he made a technical error. He got caught and he was knocked out. Rather disappointing to hear this in regards to Jaime Munguia, to have a flunked drug sample, the A sample, whatever it's called. Okay, there's going to be the B sample. I don't know what that's going to do. Likely, that's going to be flunked. I mean, just because one fails and one passes doesn't necessarily mean the guy's off the hook. I mean, it's going to probably haunt him for the remainder of his career. But to point any fingers at Eddie Reynoso at this is absolutely absurd, because Munguia, regardless, had the option to stay away from it, and he didn't. That's why he did what he did, and it's rather just all around disappointing. I mean, it's not Ryan Garcia doing what he did. Jaime Munguia is a pro's pro himself, class act in and out of the ring. I mean, he's the opposite of Ryan Garcia. I don't understand why he would resort to this, why it's necessary to resort to this. We consider he was a heavy favorite to win that rematch, and he probably could have won it without the use of whatever he took. We'll find out what it was he was on here soon, because that B sample is probably going to tell a whole lot. I don't get why fighters resort to this stuff. I mean, I can go on and on about the history of this. I mean, it's one after another after another. I mean, go back to the number of times guys like Tyson Fury flunked this. Makes me wonder why you need to resort to this sort of thing. I don't get it. I mean, I get why Ryan Garcia did, because he's a different, category, but I don't get why others do. It's a shame. And of course, the news out of California yesterday or earlier today, whenever it is that now the Emmanuel Navarette, Charley Suarez fight has now been declared a no contest. Everybody knows the story with this one. The punch that caused the cut, of course, it was turned and later ruled a headbutt. It basically was awarded a technical decision win for Navarette. And basically a fight that wasn't necessarily all that great to begin with. Of course, we know Navarette had to literally weight cut at least a half dozen times to make that 130-pound limit. And of course, he got cut with a punch. The replay showed it. The California Athletic Commission basically reviewed it and basically said, because it was missed, we're going to declare it a no contest. And now an immediate rematch is ordered. Excellent ruling. Job well done with this. I say this because everybody who saw the fight knew what happened. It was a punch. Replay showed it was a punch. Everything showed it was a punch that caused that cut. And because of it, now we have to have a rematch. And hopefully this time, Emmanuel Navarette can discipline himself to make the 130-pound limit and become a better fighter, because I think he's too good to have to do this sort of thing. Always well disciplined. The only loss he has on his resume was to Sergey the Bohutchuk, the one that was Dennis Burenchuk, the one that was knocked out by Keyshawn Davis not too long ago. But the right ruling was done here with this. An immediate rematch is ordered, which is the right thing. Let's put this thing to bed once and for all. Suarez deserves a fair shake, but also Emmanuel Navarette deserves another chance to show that he can actually discipline himself to make the super featherweight limit and find a way to get himself on the right track, because he's too good of a fighter to resort to having to become a so-called weight bully or having a weight cut for a fight against a fighter of Suarez's caliber. Maybe he can pick himself up and make the weight this time and perform better. He's too good to be doing something like this. I mean, I just remember when he just obliterated Isaac Dobe twice. And of course, recently he just blasted out the used up has-been Oscar Valdez, which he beats Oscar Valdez 10 times out of 10 anyways. He's too good to be doing this sort of thing. He needs to just get back in this gym, get back into shape. Hopefully he can make the weight this time, and we can get a fair rematch between the two without anything like this. Excellent ruling. Everybody knows what happened the first time they fought, and we're going to get a rematch, hopefully sooner rather than later, and hopefully Navarette can discipline himself to make the weight and perform better, because he wasn't all that great when they fought recently. Got bailed out because of a technicality ruling, which the California Athletic Commission rightfully changed the official result to a no contest, and we're going to get a rematch. Smart job. Good job. Now to a night that took place 36 years ago today, and we want to talk about controversies. Here's an all-Mexican controversy that took place at the Caesars Palace Sports Pavilion. It was the fight between Lupe Pintor and Carlos Zarate, two standout bantamweights from the country of Mexico. Pintor, also known as Jose Guadalupe Pintor Guzman, a two-time world champion in the bantamweight and super bantamweight classes. He basically faced the standout champion Carlos Zarate, who was a longtime champion, who basically was making the ninth defense of his title that he won from a tough, durable fighter named Rodolfo Ramirez in 1976 when he won the bantamweight title. made 8 successful title defenses, went up to super bantamweight to challenge the standout Wilfredo Gomez for his title and lost. So he comes back down and fights the very tough and durable Lupe Pintor, one of the two of the premier bantamweights of that time. And you don't see much bantamweights of that era unless it's Eder Joffre out of Brazil. That's a different category. And fighting Harada out of Japan. But the story with this one here is that when you put up this fight, this fight was basically controlled for the most part by Carlos Zarate. Used his size, his reach, his activity. It basically did anything you wanted to do to Pintor. In a fight where 2 of the 3 judges scored a fight 1 point for Pintor, but the judge that scored it for Zarate scored it a 12-point difference. And to cap it all off, the Associated Press had it a 9-point win for Carlos Zarate. Controversy still reigns in our sport. We all know this. Everybody knows this. I mean, I could bust out the robbery list. Maybe I should have put this one on there because now after I read it, I was on a show last year where we had the worst decisions in boxing history. I should have added this after reading this today because this one was just god-awful. How can 2 judges score a fight 1 point for Pintor, but one guy just scored basically a wipeout for Zarate? And actually watching the fight, it basically was a wipeout because Zarate did anything and everything he wanted to. Not a disrespect to Lupe Pintor, because Lupe Pintor is a real tough fighter from Mexico and an all-time great. How are you going to have 3 judges and you have 2 scoring 1 point for Pintor and another one for Zarate? That's something, it's inexcusable. It was a despicable decision. And anyway, the brain knows Zarate should have kept his title. And when Pintor had his hand raised, he basically had his hand raised and was in the face of almost shock because nobody thought he would be rewarded the decision. I mean, the judges that night were just absolutely abysmal. I mean, when was the last time you heard that? So, Lupe Pintor wins his first of his two world titles when he beat Carlos Zarate. Goes on to make many defenses of his bantamweight this championship before he lost to the stand-up Puerto Rican Wilfredo Gomez, who eventually went down in '82 in Louisiana in an absolute war between Pintor and Gomez. I mean, they were just letting it all hang out. Your typical Mexico-Puerto Rico war was Pintor-Gomez. Gomez just gradually, found a second win and just wore out Pintor to where the fight was over. But we talk about 2 of the all-time great little big men, especially from the country of Mexico, where it's filled with all of them. Lupe Pintor and Carlos Zarate are on that list. I mean, multiple world championships all the way around both ways. And we talk about the run that Pintor had, not just at 118, but also 122. Briefly held a super bantamweight title in actually 85 when he upset Juan Meza and then later on lost the only reason why he lost the super bantamweight title was when he went to Thailand and couldn't make weight. So basically he lost the title on the scales. So he was a 2-time world champion, one of the premier Mexican fighters to come out. I mean, talk about some of the all-time great Mexican fighters. I mean, of course, Sanchez, Chavez, Marquez, Ricardo Lopez, just to name several. Lupe Pintor and Carlos Zarate are in that bunch. I mean, especially in the 70s when no one talks about those weight classes, because the only kingpin of those weight classes was when Roberto Duran just wiped out the lightweight division. But it was 2 standout fighters, Pintor and Zarate. But the controversy still lingers 30-some-odd years later, as this one took place in '79 at the Caesars Palace Sports Pavilion. Just the way flip-flop of how the judges had this fight. 2 of them had it 1 point for Pintor, and 1 had it for Zarate, basically in a wipeout. Makes you want to think about things a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to be one of these guys like everybody in the fight game that likes to blast judging, because I always said it's always human error. But the way this scoring flip-flopped is just absolutely mind-blowing, because anyone who saw this fight, anyone who remembers this fight, knows Carlos Zarate should have been the rightful winner and should have successfully defended his title. But the two judges that gave 1-point wins to Lupe Pintor had other ideas. In fact, you give 1-point wins to a fighter like that while another judge just has it a wipeout, has some interesting perceptions. Let me just leave it at that. It has very interesting perceptions. And we know how perceptions are in the sport of boxing. It was that back in the 70s also. Well, I can go on perceptions all night if I want to, but I don't like talking about perceptions. And another one that took place, this one took place 34 years ago. They say every great champion has their one last great performance. Thomas Hearns did that at the same place, Caesar's Palace, at the outdoor ring, when he basically gave a boxing lesson to the unbeaten Virgil Hill to win the light heavyweight championship. Virgil Hill was a solid technician. I mean, one of the masters of the jab of his time. Would travel to Vegas to fight the very experienced Thomas Hearns. Basically supposed to be a showcase for Hill because Hearns hadn't looked himself over the last few years prior to that. You could probably say he hadn't looked the same since Iran Barkley drove him through the canvas in 1988. But Hearns picks himself out, goes to the well one last time to school the unbeaten and standout Virgil Hill to win the unanimous decision to win his 6th world title in 5 weight classes, and basically puts his name in boxing history forever. I mean, everyone wrote Hearns off as old, washed up, and as a stepping stone for Virgil Hill. That didn't happen on this night, and as a result, that's why Thomas Hearns became the light heavyweight champion when he stunned Virgil Hill at Caesar's Palace. Now, Hearns, a year later, would lose that championship in a rematch to Iran Barkley, and you could probably say that was the end game right there. But for Virgil Hill, multiple times as a light heavyweight and cruiserweight champion, maybe his standout performance was when he won the cruiserweight title when he went to France to just pulverize Fabrice Tiozzo in 1 round. I mean, he went to, he basically did it Fabrice Tiozzo what Mike Tyson did to Michael Spinks. I mean, just got in that ring, blasting him out, party was over. And nobody thought Virgil Hill had that in him because Virgil Hill basically was perceived as a one-handed fighter, a technician with that left jab. But that left jab won him a lot of big fights over the years, especially in his home state of Bismarck, North Dakota. But when he traveled to France to obliterate Fabrice Tiozzo in 1 round to win the cruiserweight championship, maybe that was his finest hour. I mean, when you can go to a guy's backyard and just blast him out like that, it says something because no one could see that coming. He was basically viewed as a tune-up for Tiozzo. But Virgil Hill had other ideas. But it was 34 years ago today. Thomas Hearns, for the last time, heard the words, and the new champion of the world, when he beat Virgil Hill, a very, very good light heavyweight. And I mean a very good light heavyweight. Maybe a top 20 all-time in that division. Consider the depth of that division. Hearns basically schooled him and won the unanimous decision to become a 6-time world champion of 5 weight classes, and what was a terrific performance. Virgil Hill is a standout fighter. I mean, you would talk about underrated fighters you need to learn about. Virgil Hill is one of them. Just lost to an elite all-time great in Thomas Hearns. You guys in the fight community know just how great Thomas Hearns was. And I conclude this with maybe that we talk about this guy's legacy over and over. A lot of people want to dissect it any way they want. But it was 9 years today. The world said goodbye to the greatest, Muhammad Ali. Everybody could talk about his stances, his political views, whatever. I'm not using my platform for it. And I ask you guys to keep that stuff away from me because I will not entertain it. But his legacy is still lives on. We talk about the word aura, and we use that word a lot in sports. No one had greater aura, maybe ever, than Muhammad Ali. Maybe the only one that came close was Michael Jordan in his heyday. But when Ali went to the United Center for Game 1 of the 97 finals between the Jazz and the Bulls, he himself almost brought down the United Center, the house that Michael Jordan was in. Of course, there's a picture backstage of Ali and Jordan side by side. One of the more maybe goosebump, polarizing, all-time great pictures you'll ever see and it was ever taken. I mean, a goat with a goat. I mean, he get greater than Ali and Jordan. But I mean, big fight after big fight after big fight, a global hit, a global icon. I mean, not just in the States, but globally. I mean, we know he went to Zaire to fight George Foreman. We know the Rumble and that was the Rumble in the Jungle. We know the Thriller in Manila when he beat Joe Frazier in that trilogy. Of course, his fight March 8th, 1971, the first of that Frazier trilogy, is still the greatest trilogy ever. Some consider March 8th, 1971, the first Frazier-Ali fight, the greatest fight of all time. And it has a strong decision, given the back and forth both fighters had, all the momentum shifts at the highest level for the highest prize at the time, the heavyweight championship of the world. And of course, you go back before then, when he was an 8-1 underdog and shocked the whole world by beating the always feared Sonny Liston, making Liston quit on the stool, followed by the rematch a year later, a little more than a year later in Lewiston, Maine. We know the story with that one. The fights with Norton, the fights with Bonavena, Quarry, Shavers, among many others. We can coin the phrase aura every single which way we want. I mean, we can talk about aura with this athlete. You can talk about aura about that athlete. Well deserved. I mean, a lot of them have it. Maybe ever, just ever, not just in the boxing culture, maybe in sports culture and even society as we know it. No one had aura like Muhammad Ali. Even in his declining health years, every time you saw the presence of Ali in the stands, everybody would always go nuts, because that should tell you the impact the greatest Muhammad Ali had for as long as he breathed air. I mean, everybody talks about all the hypotheticals with him. There's a reason why he stood out. I mean, I could point to a bazillion examples. I mean, what he did to Sonny Liston to make him quit Rumble in the Jungle, Thriller in Manila. Of course, you can forget September 15th, 1978, when his health was really declining. Goes to the well for one last time to stun Leon Spinks to regain the heavyweight championship and a lineal three-time world champion. That's the aura of Muhammad Ali. I can dig into other his impact culturally, his impact on society, among many other things. But when you talk about aura of all time, and we're not talking about just sports aura of all time to come through this earth, nobody had it like Muhammad Ali. Maybe Michael Jordan's the closest. Several others before, several others after, maybe in that range. I get it. But ever, just ever, we talk about aura on this planet Earth, nobody had it like Muhammad Ali. And I don't think we're going to see anything close, remotely close to that kind of aura maybe ever again. Everyone can use aura in sports. I get it. Everyone can use aura among, many things in life. I get it. But just that word alone, when I think of the word aura, Muhammad Ali is number one on my list. Plain and simple. I mean, everybody, the footage is out there. All of his quotes are out there. All of his impact on the culture is out there. I mean, the way he got the crowd on his side for the 1974 Rumble in the Jungle fight when he beat Big George Foreman down there says all you need to know about the great Muhammad Ali. I mean, and everywhere he went, who could forget when he tore down Atlanta in the 1996 Olympics when he lit up the torch to host the Olympic Games in Atlanta as the last man standing, lighting up the torch and having the city of Atlanta just up in the air and basically just screaming off the top of their lungs. And you can always hear the chants of Ali, Ali, Ali. His legacy will never be touched. His legacy will never be, duplicated. Maybe imitated, but never duplicated. Because there was one Muhammad Ali. He came, he saw, he conquered, and now he's at the gates of heaven. May God rest the soul of the greatest. And every time he said the greatest, he went out there and backed it up. I mean, what more can you say? I mean, in a time when everyone talks about, all the trash talkers, yada, yada, maybe the greatest trash talker of all time was Muhammad Ali. Why? Because he said he was going to beat Sonny Liston at the time when nobody feared Sonny Liston. He made Sonny Liston quit on the stool. He told the whole world he was going to beat George Foreman at a time when George Foreman was deemed invisible. George Foreman's on the canvas in the 8th round. He told the whole world he was going to handle Joe Frazier in the Thriller Manila, and in a fight that was life and death. It basically, both guys fighting for their lives, not literally, but like really. I mean, both guys were flirting with death that night. Ali was the one left standing. I can go on and on. He is the greatest. You can talk about greatest with this guy, greatest with that guy. It doesn't matter. No one had aura like Muhammad Ali. You can talk about anything you want with him. It doesn't matter. It tells you the impact he has. We talk about the good, the bad, the pretty, and the ugly, because there was a lot of that all over the place. But he had aura like none other. Rest in peace, Muhammad Ali. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I hope everyone has themselves a wonderful rest of the 3rd of June 2025. As always, make self-care your number one priority in all walks of life. If you take care of yourself first, good things will come to follow. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. Always focus on you first and only you first. Have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless and enjoy the evening.